On Tech News Today, Reuters reporter Joseph Menn is here to talk about a newly unmasked Chinese Army hacking unit. And VentureBeat's Harrison Weber joins us to share his exclusive on eBay's delivery business. Plus, Salesforce.com goes big on tiny wearables. IBM's former CEO gets thrown under the bus. And there's a hot new thermostat that tracks your location. All that and more coming up right now.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, June 10th, 2014. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgan.
I'm Joe Panettieri.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day with some of the world's best journalists. Joe Panettieri, today is the big day. This is the big day. It's Ice Tea Day.
Oh, wow.
I was going to say,
Props.
are you going to give me a clue as to what today is?
No, I like to throw these things at you. Yeah.
I know it's Tuesday.
You know, these are kind of BS holidays created by the industries that make products like this.
Apparently so.
But everybody likes iced tea, so why not?
There you go.
All right, Joe. Well, let's jump right into the news. A new hacker group with ties to China's army has been implicated in stealing American, European, and Japanese secrets. According to the security company CrowdStrike, the Shanghai-based unit has specialized in hacking satellite, aerospace, and communications companies. The group is codenamed, ready for this, Putter Panda. Joseph Menn is a reporter for Reuters and joins us to explain all of this. Welcome, Joseph.
Thanks for having me.
Putter Panda, really? Why is this group called Putter Panda?
All right, so first of all, they don't call themselves Putter Panda. This is what CrowdStrike has dubbed them. And CrowdStrike's formula is to name everything in a given country within one family. So everything from China they track is something Panda. And they picked Putter Panda because there was some email targeting around golf playing. So that's hence Putter Panda. Everything from Russia, by the way, is a bear.
Joe Panettieri here, Joseph. Thanks for coming on. So your report also mentioned that the group went after military contractors. Now, is this par for the course? And how do they find these quote-unquote contractors?
Well, they're looking for trade secrets and some national strategic secrets. Most satellites are put up by contractors for the Defense Department, and they have nifty know-how, and that's valuable to folks in China. So this one was, they don't break it down what's commercial and what's military in secrets. Generally, the top priority for Chinese hackers, like hackers in other countries, are national security secrets, and then commercial secrets comes after that, and then sort of like the bottom rung is pure financial crime, credit card hacking, something like that.
Now, Joseph Menn, you wrote that the group used applications like Adobe Reader and Microsoft Office to deploy custom malware. How does this work exactly?
Well, it starts like most hacking attacks. They do the easiest thing, and the easiest thing is targeted email. It works really well. We're seeing more from social networks as well, but that's the way in. You can get people to click on links. It doesn't seem to matter how much training they've had. If it seems to come from somebody they know, that enough people will open it, particularly if they've tailored it to a specific individual, which is what they were doing here. That's where actually most of the effort seems to be going into the social engineering part. They put the effort into getting somebody to click. And then these are not 0 days. They're launching known but unpatched. They're exploiting known but unpatched flaws in Adobe and Office, which again is completely normal. And then they get in, and there's a remote control Trojan, so they're allowed to do everything on the computer as if the person actually owning the computer was driving the train. They're just not driving the train anymore.
Got it. Okay. So now CrowdStrike's report was previously sent to clients and U.S. intelligence agencies. Do you have any clues as to when that happened?
A few weeks ago. They've been the initial report to clients, I believe, was in April, and then after that, they were briefing the intelligence agencies. They told me that they didn't want to trip up any active investigations, and apparently they didn't get any signals that they should withhold. And the way that the more aggressive posture of the U.S. government seems to be these days to let it all hang out, to name and shame, and to use that hopefully for leverage in negotiating with the Chinese government. So far, no great success there. In fact, things are going backwards pretty fast. China heaped scorn on this report today in Beijing, as they did with a similar, with the most recent event before this, which was the indictment of a different PLA-tied hacking group last month.
And that group was discovered by Mandiant some time ago, and that was group unit 61398, whereas this group is 6146.
61486.
That's right, yeah. Which is the 12th Bureau of the PLA's 3rd General Staff Department. This is a confusing point to me. Are these actually uniformed military hackers? Are they freelancers? Are they sort of pencil-pushing type hackers that happen to be associated with the Chinese military? How does that work exactly? Who are these people?
That's a really good question. There is, in general, there's a mix. There are folks that wear uniforms, and then there's sort of some of them go home and do some freelancing on their own, speaking generally not about this group. These guys appear to be uniformed soldiers. In fact, what's unusual about this report is that it has the name of one alleged participant, his real name, and pictures that he posted on his own blog, social networking sites. It's unusual for that sort of detail to get out of the U.S. intelligence and into the mainstream, but they got that here apparently because he used his the same email to register some of the key websites used in the attacks as he did in some of his social networking profiles. So anyway, so this guy was in one of those pictures. You could see military hats in the background. One of the wags at CrowdStrike has said this is the first example of the new science of attribution, where they deduce a person's role in the government based on his headgear.
So what you're implying is that these super hackers aren't really all that bright, actually. Now, Joseph Menn, before I let you go, I understand that you've written what sounds like a really interesting book. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. It's called Fatal System Error: The Hunt for the New Crime Lords Who Bring Down the Internet. And it reads like a trashy airport thriller, but it's all true. And it's an expose of Russian and Chinese organized criminal groups.
Sounds great. Well,
and there it is there.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Joseph Menn, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Where can people find your work?
Let's see, I tweet at Joseph Menn. I have a fairly public LinkedIn presence where I'm also Joseph Menn, and I guess the website is fserror.com.
And also Reuters.com. Thanks again for joining us on Tech News Today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Mike, Jason, it looks like Salesforce is the latest company trying to make a fashion statement in the wearable market. The cloud CRM company has launched Salesforce Wear, a developer pack to help write enterprise applications for the wearable market. And there's coverage on this over on ZDNet and on a range of websites today. But, you know, Mike, as you were hearing about this and with all the wearable coverage we've been doing here on Tech News Today, any initial reaction, any knee-jerk reaction, and anything you're going to go out and write yourself right now?
I always have a knee-jerk reaction to these things. The first one is that it's really surprising because, you know, one of the things that they've done here that's really kind of cool is that they have different sort of apps for different platforms. For example, they have one type of app for Google Glass. They have another type of app, a reporting app for the Pebble smartwatch. They have a notification app for Android Wear, and this is for managers so they can keep track of different things. So they're essentially typecasting each of the major types of mobile wearable devices and providing what they think is a reasonable Salesforce app for those wearable devices. You know, it feels to me also, Joe Panettieri, like a kind of a stab in the dark where they really don't know for sure exactly how, you know, white-collar professionals are going to use wearable devices. But I really admire the fact that they're going out there and just trying some things and to see what happens.
Yeah, I would echo your point. I love the fact that the apps you just mentioned, these sample wearable apps, are actually available on the Salesforce.com site and out on, I think it's out on GitHub as well, so that you can go out and use that as a framework, not to get too caught up in what's already been written, but also, really just to get you started, and give you some imagination as to where you could go with this. Now, the news comes only about a week after we discussed the Google Glass designer offerings coming out, and I'm still not sold on Google Glass in terms of whether or not the sales are going to ramp up quickly. And I do think it's still super early in the wearable market, and we're all sort of, even though we're talking about Google Glass, it sort of is the blind leading the blind in some ways in this market. But I tell you, as we were preparing this report, I did do a little bit of research, and I was looking back on the Q1 results in terms of where we are in terms of unit shipments, et cetera. You're talking 700,000 unit shipments of just smartwatches alone for Q1, and roughly 500,000 of these units involve the Samsung smartwatch, and that goes out from Strategy Analytics came up with that data. So I think we're off to a promising start with wearables, but really, anytime you're delivering hardware, you need the applications, you need the apps, you need the software, and maybe Salesforce is able to jumpstart the market here. Too early to say, but I'm intrigued by it.
Definitely, and I think I disagree with the people who are naysayers around wearables. People say, well, nobody wears a watch anymore. I don't wear a watch. I don't want to wear a watch. Google Glass makes you look like a dork, plus it's invasive, and you're like, you're surveilling everyone. And, all this talk about jackets, smart jackets and things like that, that's just crazy talk. But I think, in fact, that it's going to be a gigantic market, especially smartwatches, simply because, and again, people, one of the arguments people use against smartwatches is, I don't need it. I already have a smartphone, so why would I need a smartwatch? Well, you don't need a smartphone either. I got news for you. We don't need any of this stuff. But when something feels really good and it really kind of like gives you a sense of awareness about what's going on around you, you're going to jump on it, and smartwatches are going to do that. You look at these watches, these apps that we're talking about now. You have productivity apps, a notification app, for example, the one for Android Wear. Android Wear, I think, is going to be the leading platform, at least in the initial days. This is so managers can authorize and approve requests. So you're a busy executive, you're in meetings all day, your watch buzzes, you look at it and it says so-and-so wants approval on something, you tap a thing and it's approved. You haven't opened email, you haven't been rude to the person you're talking to. You can even do it while you're presenting. And it feels good because you have a sense of awareness. You know something has happened, you've interacted with your staff or whatever it is that you're doing, and that's something that's very, very powerful. It's really, again, I like to imagine, Joe Panettieri, an invisible bubble around the person. And there are things that are inside the bubble that are part of what you are. For example, glasses. Glasses are part of what you are. When you hire somebody and they need glasses, they bring their own glasses. The glasses are part of them. If they use a PC, you have to supply that because that's part of the company. So there's a barrier between the self and the company where, where technology lives, and smartphones live right on the barrier, but wearables live inside the barrier. They're sort of like cyborg type devices that enhance the person themselves. And so I think that's going to be something that people are going to feel when they do it. It's just like the iPad. When the iPad came out and said, nobody needs this, it's really dumb, tablets are dumb, it's just an extra device. But once you used it, you could feel how it would be useful, or you could feel that it wouldn't be useful to you personally. But it's one of those things where you don't know what's happening until you actually experience it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see which of the business applications potentially takes off first, because I think, to your point, with the iPad, you had the marketplace where you had thousands and thousands of apps from which to choose, both for consumer and business. With these smartwatches, other wearables, the question is just how much can you shrink down and fit in terms of a serviceable, high-value app. Now, something like instant messaging that takes instant messaging to the next natural stage, where, as you pointed out, it buzzes you instantly for an urgent need from one of your staff members. Hey, that's high value. But I'm wondering just how many apps we can discover that provide value in the wearable market, and maybe, just maybe, Salesforce is getting us started here. But we'll see. It's sort of ironic too, because some people are saying the Salesforce platform itself is getting a little dated. Salesforce.com, it's been around for more than a decade now. Some of the app developers for it say, hey, as a cloud platform, platform, it's getting a little long in the tooth. Well, maybe this modernizes it in a really neat way. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, eBay plans to shut down its eBay Now local delivery service, according to an exclusive by Harrison Weber at VentureBeat. Harrison Weber is here to tell us all about it. Welcome, Harrison Weber.
Thank you.
So before we get into the news, can you tell us, give us a little background on the eBay Now service? What is it and where did it come from?
Yeah, of course. So eBay kind of pioneered this space in an interesting way. Of course, back in the dot-com eras, there were things like Cosmo in the local delivery space. And so eBay kind of helped jumpstart this along with 1-1 and Postmates, basically offering 1 to 2 hour deliveries.
Now, in terms of, you talked to a former eBay valet. Now, did he or she tell you anything of particular interest?
So I spoke with 2 former valets and then another industry source, which I can't disclose. And collectively, they basically confirmed that eBay Now will likely shut down. And
you talked to an eBay spokesperson. What did they tell you?
Yeah, well, essentially, they did not deny the claims at all. Kind of a very elusive statement, that they're focused and constantly testing in this space. Essentially, if this weren't happening, they probably would have straightforward denied that it would have, that eBay Now would continue to exist. As of now, nothing is 100% confirmed, but we are trusting our sources, and that's why we reported the news.
Now, what's interesting to me about this news is that there are other companies that are being super aggressive about getting into this space, like Google, for example, spending tons of money. Uber is another one. So on the one hand, you have a bunch of companies that are aggressively believing that delivery of brick and mortar store delivery is a great business, and they want to own this. And then you have a case like this where it appears that eBay Now is kind of like floundering. What is it that the Googles of the world know that eBay doesn't, do you think?
It's almost a little bit sad given eBay's, they've been in the space for most recently 2 years now, and it was the product of a $75 million acquisition. I think, honestly, eBay hasn't had the best results in the past few months. That's at least my impression, and it looks like perhaps they're just blowing a ton of money on it. Google has a far bigger war chest. Uber really gets logistics, and they know how to move things from one place to another. So honestly, this just isn't eBay's wheelhouse compared to the other 2 companies.
This is Joe Panettieri here. So in terms of eBay Now, do you think there's a fallback position for eBay, or are they going to completely punt and abandon here? Do you think they can hedge just a little bit, or are they exiting fully, done?
So what points at a full exit is we do know from a source that eBay has walked away from a very close relationship with Best Buy. They had a relationship in terms of pricing, and they did some other exchanges between the 2 of them. Them walking away from that suggests that this is definitely going to be an exit. I did note at the end of the story, however, that they could be doing different things with the Milo platform that they bought for $75 million, I think 4 years ago. They could do something where it's like, enabling pickup. They could power something at stores, enabling people to buy on buy on eBay.com and pick up locally. But there's really just no sign of what they're going to do.
Yeah, they had originally planned to expand into 25 cities by the end of this year. They're currently in, 3 or 4 cities: San Francisco, San Jose, New York, Chicago, and Dallas. That's 5, I think. It looks like, it looks like their plans were kind of optimistic. Harrison Weber, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today and telling us all about this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You can find Harrison Weber at venturebeat.com and also on Twitter at Harrison Weber. Well, Joe, it looks like Lou Gerstner is getting thrown under the bus. What's going on?
How interesting, right? Yeah, this story comes from a little bit of my old stomping ground, covering the enterprise IT space. I definitely wanted to shift gears a little bit, go over and look at IBM today, and focus on some of their current revenue and business woes. Now, if you look at IBM, this isn't new news, quote unquote, but a lot of people tracking the company have noticed that revenue has fallen 8 quarters in a row. Now here's the interesting part. Some of the experts are blaming IBM's struggle with their shift from big hardware and software sales to cloud computing. Hey, no surprise there. Others are blaming the CEO transition from Sam Palmisano over to Ginny Rometty, the current CEO. Now that transition happened in January 2012. But Mike, Jason, here's where it gets really interesting in terms of the spin on this story. There's a new spin that says perhaps the problem started with Lou Gerstner, the CEO who actually saved IBM in the 1990s. And the theory goes something like this. The theory is Lou earned so much money and became so accustomed to such a big salary package and working so closely at Wall Street that the follow-on CEOs have adopted some of those strategies. And now, instead of putting innovation first and customers first, IBM's addicted to earnings per share and also addicted to big salary packages for the CEOs. And the setbacks have been quite painful. And what's also a little bit interesting about this story is it emerges from Robert X. Cringely, the former gossip reporter over at InfoWorld, who really cut his teeth in the market in the 1980s and 1990s and did some great gossip coverage back in the day. Now he's got an ebook available over on Amazon.com talking about the decline of IBM. And listen, Gerstner isn't the central portion of this story, but he bears a piece of it. Quite interesting times. Mike, what do you think?
Well, just a little context for your comment that the follow-on CEOs line their pockets as well. Sam Palmisano, who was the CEO after Gerstner, but before the current CEO, retired with a $241 million retirement package. So that's the scale that we're talking about in terms of enriching oneself. I think Robert X. Cringely's argument might be a good one. I haven't read the book yet, but there are 2 problems with it as far as I can see. First of all, I think it's kind of flimsy to blame what happened with 2 follow-on CEOs on the previous CEO. Every CEO is in charge of their own tenure, if you will, and I don't think it makes sense. You know, it's kind of like blaming the woes at Apple on some CEO that existed in the 90s or whatever. I mean, it's just kind of ludicrous to assign blame like that. The other part of it that I think is kind of weak is that so many of these comments about the performance issues of IBM, the problems at IBM, the issues that they have with customers and trust and all these issues that Cringely raises and blames on Gerstner come from current unnamed employees. Now, if you work at a giant company like IBM, and IBM is a gigantic company, people grouse. The people are unhappy at giant companies. They complain constantly. It's companies like that are very bureaucratic and frustrating to people. That has always been the case. I think what might be different is that people are easy to get at because of the internet. It's easier for them to share information about their share grumbling and so on because of the internet. And so I really don't see any evidence that he's presented. And of course, I haven't read the whole book. I've read an excerpt and some reviews and so on. But it seems to me that he's taking the ordinary workaday grumbling from a gigantic corporation and applying that to huge problems at IBM and then blaming a CEO from years ago. And the whole argument just seems to kind of fall down. I think for a company like IBM, it has to be judged on its bottom line, on its financial performance, how it's serving its shareholders. And, if people are quitting in droves, or if there's, if there are lawsuits coming at them from employees or whatever, that's a different story. But this seems to me to be something that's just that he's making something out of something very ordinary. Right.
Well, you know what? I think I don't want to overstate the Gerstner hook, but I think that's sort of the sexiest part of the story today. But for me, it's about course corrections, right? So you had, quote unquote, Lou as CEO, and Lou did a course correction. He pushed IBM into services, and instead of breaking up IBM, which everyone called for back in the 1990s, Lou actually said, no. We are the sum of our parts is greater when it's together. So we're going to keep it together and focus on services. What I think what IBM missed since that time is Sam, the next CEO, didn't really do a course correction into cloud computing, big data, et cetera. And now Ginny is late. The current CEO is late with those course corrections in that, IBM had a cloud platform called Smart Cloud, but it was not a world-class platform, to say the least. They were actually losing government contracts to Amazon Web Services. IBM, of all companies, was losing government contracts to Amazon. Unbelievable development there. And I think in the past year, we've seen IBM go out and buy SoftLayer as an example to try and play catch up. And I do think highly of the SoftLayer acquisition. The challenge you have is you've got $100 billion company that's trying to make up time and ground by buying, companies that generate 500 million, maybe $1 billion overall in revenue long term, and things like IBM Watson, the R&D area. I mean, that's $100 million opportunity so far, not much. So it's almost like Ginny is trying to make up for, I think, a lack of course corrections by Sam Palmisano back in the day.
And Bartman in the chat room says that he's worked at IBM since 1997. He concurs that Gerstner is to blame to a certain extent, but he also blames current management. Bartman is anonymous, so hopefully he won't get fired, etc. for these comments.
Well, I trust anyone called Bartman. That sounds good.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a name you can trust. And he actually is a very trustworthy and valuable member of the chat room, so we appreciate that comment. Well, Joe Panettieri, Honeywell today introduced a competitor to Google's Nest thermostat. It's called the Honeywell Lyric, and it costs $279. That's even more expensive than the Nest thermostat. Like the Nest thermostat, you adjust the Lyric with its round dial, or you can use a smartphone app. The thermostat connects via your home Wi-Fi network, but unlike the Nest, the Lyric uses your phone's location to figure out when to change the temperature. For example, when you leave, it goes into energy-saving mode. And Joe Panettieri, to me, this seems like the biggest problem with this product. It assumes that every single member of your household will have a fully functional device that's with a well-charged battery and the app running and the whole bit, because otherwise, it's in the middle of winter and you go out to get some firewood and, your family freezes to death because the thermostat says, oh, you're gone. We'll go ahead and go into energy-saving mode. Nobody's home. So it just seems like the Nest approach to this, which uses motion sensing, which is still not perfect, is probably a little better than you have to have a phone or you're going to die from heat or freezing. So I don't know. But it's nice to see other companies getting into this space. And there are some attributes of this device that are kind of cool.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about here is I would call it dysfunction 3.0. And dysfunction 1.0 was that blinking VCR light that every parent in America asked their kids to reset the VCR clock to fix. I think dysfunction 2.0 is the current smart TV and remote control challenge where, again, every parent and now grandparent in America is asking their kid to set the remote controls and turn on and off TVs in the house and apps on the TVs in the house. 3.0 could be this whole thermostat smart home thing. And, it's almost ironic to call it a smart home. We'll see just how smart Americans are as they try to leverage these devices.
And we want to see what the tolerance is for smart devices. This device is really smart, possibly way too smart. For example, it has a feature called Fine Tune, and it looks at the outdoor temperature and looks at things like humidity and weather, and it changes the temperature and the settings accordingly. For example, if it's humid, it will actually lower the temperature more than it would if it were dry, even if the temperature is the same. And so it's trying really, really hard to use all the data at its disposal to fine-tune the temperature in your home. And, the truth is that the Nest thermostat, which is obviously the leader in this category, which, they were selling it through the App Store and so on, I hear people grumbling about this device. It doesn't really work quite as advertised. It's not able to really adjust the temperature automatically as they say it should. And of course, it's early days. So we could get to the point where thermostats become really smart and that smartness is a good thing. They always adjust the temperature just right. They save you maximum amount of money through energy saving modes and that sort of thing. But today, I don't think this category is really there yet. As you say, we'll see how smart they are. And if they do get smart, do people want smartness? Sometimes you just want a dumb thing that does what it's told. Just set the temperature at 72 degrees because I said so and that's what I want, you know, and instead of it second guessing everything you're doing and who's there and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see how that category goes. And speaking of companies that are struggling and on the rocks, what's going on with our friendly neighborhood Radio Shack, Joe?
Yeah, here's another story off the beaten path from some of the consumer coverage we've been doing. But, you know, Radio Shack, it's no big secret. The company is really struggling to remain relevant. But some new developments this morning. They've reported roughly nearly $100 million quarterly loss this morning. And the retailer's big bet on a turnaround involves two things. Number one is something called Fix It Here. Now, Mike, if you ever crack your smartphone screen or break your tablet, this Fix It Here service Radio Shack's trying to roll out to all of its stores, hopefully will deliver same-day fix-it service, so to speak, in that local area in your backyard. That's move number one. Move number two is potentially the return of Radio Shack branded products. We'll see about that. But you know, Mike, let's rewind just a little bit. Are you a Trash 80 guy? Did you you know, grow up in Radio Shack, so to speak?
Totally, absolutely. And I think that that's what makes me think that they're sort of on the wrong track. They're trying to compete with the consumer electronics companies by selling consumer electronics, and they're offering this repair service, the Fix It Here program. I think that's really the opposite of what Radio Shack means to me as somebody who has been a customer for many, many years, which is that Radio Shack is where I go to get stuff for me to fix it myself, for me to build things. Right. And right now we're in the middle of this makers movement. And that Radio Shack should be at leading that parade instead of providing alternatives to building it yourself and fixing it yourself. They should be helping you build and fix things yourself. That's really the core of what Radio Shack is originally and should be. And I think they're just failing, you know, they're falling down on that account.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You look at both Radio Shack and Best Buy, and they've really become resellers of commodity products. And you look at an Amazon, which not only resells millions of things, but continues to innovate with their own offerings, Amazon-branded solutions. Now, jump back to the Radio Shack example. You look at the smartphone wave. It's slowing down. It's a commodity. You're not going to make much money either A, selling those devices, or B, fixing them. Then you have other waves coming along like the drone wave. I mean, every drone that takes off in America in the next 5 years should have been sold by Radio Shack, in my opinion, but we'll see.
Totally. I totally agree with that. There are so many areas where they could jump in there and be a solution. There are lots of product areas where people hear about them. Drones is a perfect example, but they haven't touched them, they haven't tried them, they haven't gotten some advice about them. One expert named Warren Schulberg wrote in a column on the Robin Report that there are 4 problems with Radio Shack that are really killing the company. He said, number 1, the stores are outdated. Completely agree with that. They're not keeping up with the times. Number 2, Radio Shack needs to revamp their merchandise. They don't have, like, you know, all of the parts that you would like to have. In Silicon Valley, we have a small chain called Fry's. And they just have every sort of, you know, transistor, every kind of, you know, circuit board, whatever you want to build, whatever you want to build. They're very popular. Those are the kinds of parts and items that you want people to have. Number 3, the employees are clueless. This is fatal for a company like Radio Shack. They should have super knowledgeable employees. The clueless people can go work at Best Buy, but Radio Shack, they have to be consultants for people who are trying to do things, to create things, to fix things, and so on. And number 4, their online business isn't promising. Again, this is an area where they could really shine, and they just have completely failed. So it's really a tragedy. This has been a great American brand and a real boon to people, to, you know, geeks for decades, who have been into computing, who have been into building and repairing things themselves. And at this point, it just looks like Radio Shack is just lost in the woods.
Yeah, you know, I will give them 2 benefits of the doubt. I always like to say, okay, so where's the ray of hope? Here's 2 rays of hope for Radio Shack. One involves a relationship with Quirky, which is a smart toy maker. Yeah. So the whole idea is to partner up with Quirky to invent the next generation of smart toys and have them available through Radio Shack. Interesting play. We'll see how that works out. And then another relationship involves PCH. Now, PCH, this relationship could involve the next generation of hardware innovations coming through and delivered through Radio Shack stores. And it'll be a quote-unquote powered by PCH campaign, and those devices or those solutions are expected to flow through Radio Shack stores, roughly 2,000 of them in the next few months. But, you know, I would personally like to see some sort of new brand out of Radio Shack that represents the best of yesteryear. You know, the way we all talk about the Tandy brand back in the day. Tandy was actually a pretty good brand, and we all remember the Trash 80. And I know you can't go back to capture the future, but I think you can look back and capture some of the essence of the past to get ahead in the future.
I still have my Trash 80, and it still works, believe it or not. They don't make them like that anymore. Well, Joe Panettieri, you have, I believe you have teen children. A new mobile app called Dinnertime won't let your kids use their phones until they're done with dinner. The app temporarily bricks kids' phones at dinner time, then brings them back to life afterwards. The app also has a bedtime mode, which locks devices all night. Both parent and child need to run the app, and the apps are synced. The parent app can be either iOS or Android, but the child version supports only Android. Dinnertime is free, but for $1.99, you get more detailed usage reporting and the ability to link up to 5 kids' phones. I have mixed feelings about this, Joe Panettieri. I mean, it's kind of like parenting by remote control. But on the other hand, I really like the sort of bedtime mode because there's a silent pandemic, I think, in this country and across the world where kids have their phones next to their bed. First of all, it's probably not good for them to have that radio right next to their heads all night. And second of all, they text and call each other all night and wake each other up. And then, so there's a sleep deprivation phenomenon that's associated with teen use of smartphones. So it'd be nice to kind of shut them down for the night so they simply can't use their phones.
Yeah, I have a true confession here, Mike. In addition to texting with you during a show like this and texting with our audience with instant messaging, the only person I've instant messaged with during this program is actually my wife. And the instant message was nothing more than check out this link and check out the app. This is a real concern of mine. I have 2 teenage boys and 1 younger son who two of the 3 have smartphones at this point. One of the things I was considering in my own house is just turning off Wi-Fi at night at a certain point. But on the other hand, I'm the dictator, and the dictator needs broadband the entire night. So how do I get around that? I think this could be a great solution for our household. And my kids may be shocked to see this app rolled out as soon as this evening.
Yeah. Well, on that note, sorry, Joe's kids. Sorry I brought it up. Please forgive me. That is the tech news today. Joe, thanks for coming on again. You are now our Tuesday co-anchor, and I'm really glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be along for the ride. Thank you so much for having me, Mike. And Jason, take care as well. It's great to be working with you both.
Thank you.
All right, you can subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/technewstoday. And please join our Google Plus community on Google Plus. Just search the community area for Tech News Today. And we want to hear from you, so send us an email at tnt@twit.tv. Also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.